hanging out with your new friend Ty.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Tea Party Podcast, where you find new friends and new music. This week, we're doing things a little bit different. We had so many farm jammers stop by our tent and record an answer to our first four or our final four, and unfortunately, our recording software has corrupted all of those files. So I deeply apologize to anybody out there that stopped by the tent. Thank you so much for being willing to be part of the show. Thank you so much for being willing to jump on here and answer some of these questions. So we've had to call an audible. I still wanted to make sure that we talked about Farmjam, and we talked about how much fun we had and how cool it was and all of the things that happened there, including a proposal. So I've invited producer Travis, who you guys might recognize as the guy who did propose with the help of Jackson Dean, onto the show to talk about everything that happened at Farmjam and give us kind of a behind the scene of what that looked like to set up that proposal with their favorite artist. But before we get into all of that, I want to say a huge thank you to anybody out there listening, especially fans of Northwest country music. This week, the nominees of this year's Northwest Country Music Awards were released, and I am humbled. Humbled doesn't even begin to describe it, but I am so humbled to be nominated as Broadcast Personality of the Year. This is the first year they've allowed non-radio entries, and to say that I was shocked that I was on there is an absolute understatement. I look at some of these nominees, and they're absolute legends in the industry, especially around here, and I am just so happy and so humbled and so thankful to be included among that incredible group of people. Voting is open now, and you can get your tickets at northwestcma.com. The awards night is going to be at the new Spokane Tribe Casino on Sunday, November 3rd. Be sure to head over to northwestcma.com, vote, and get your tickets. You don't have to be a Northwest CMA member to vote or get your tickets, so be sure to check that out. There's several names on the list of nominees that you're going to recognize, both from our show and from Farmjam, like Dakota Poorman, Joel Gibson Jr., Aaron Crawford, Brandon Jackson, Devin Wade, and so many more. I'm hoping to set up an episode soon with the Northwest CMA founder, Rusty Jackson, so keep your eyes peeled for that one, but head on over to northwestcma.com. Go vote for all of those incredibly talented individuals out here in the Northwest. We talk about it all the time. This is such an underrated area for country music here in America. There's so many great names to come out of Washington, and they just keep coming. Tucker Wetmore, Zach Top, some of the newest names to hit the national stage coming out of Washington State, coming out of the Northwest. So be sure to head over there, support this incredible organization, support these incredible artists and musicians and songwriters at northwestcma.com. But guys, what do you say we tee off on this new episode?
It's time to tee off with Ty.
Friends, help me welcome back to the show for I think only the second time ever, our producer, Travis. Travis, how's it feel to be on the other side of the microphone for a change?
You know, it's different. It's much different than what I normally do, I'll tell you that.
Well, and we brought you on for a couple of reasons. First, because technology's dumb and we lost all of the recordings from the tent, but also because you've been a part of Farmjam as long as I have. We started with them in 2021. It's one of my favorite events each year, but it also gives you a chance to go out and do things that you don't normally get a chance to, like be security for some of the artists or, lighting tech. How many artists did you help out this year off of the stage?
Oh, I mean, 6, 7, 8. I think the funniest one is like the War Hippies. They're combat vets. What am I going to do? I'm a 5'6" guy. Like, okay, I'm here to help you, Scott, as much as I can. But mainly, I think my favorite one was probably Taylor Austin Dye and helping with a flashlight and fans. And she was a total sweetheart.
Well, and if you see any of those pictures or videos of Taylor Austin Dye from Farmjam, meeting fans or everything, the lighting there, that's 100% you.
I mean, we got a new flashlight, and I was just putting it to work.
And it's a killer flashlight, too. I don't know where we got it, but it will light up an entire room.
Well, I got it because we rented a pickup, and it was in it, and I just happened to procure it. And so it was that good.
Bonus in the rental car.
I'll take it.
So anybody that was at Farmjam, kind of the big story on Saturday night was that you somehow convinced Jackson Dean to help you propose to your girlfriend on stage. And there's a lot of stuff that went kind of behind the scenes that I don't think a lot of people know about or know kind of why that particular artist was so important to you guys. I mean, you've met him several times. He knew exactly who you were. And before we get into meeting him that day, tell everybody kind of how you guys have become this connection with Jackson Dean.
Well, it's actually kind of funny. The only watershed that you actually missed, because you were living in Vegas, could be there, was the watershed of 2021. And he was playing on the Nashville stage. And we actually hadn't planned on seeing him. And I think Jessica went to go grab an adult beverage or something. And he comes out in a David Bowie shirt, no shoes, and hits one note for sound check. And I'm like, we're staying. This guy's got it, whatever that it happens to be. And he absolutely just crushed his set and got to meet his band, with Paco and Brandon and the drummer. I forget his name at this point. Sorry, I always forget his name. But, got him a couple Tea Party koozies. And it was just one of those where I was a huge Eric Church guy. And this all of a sudden was turning into Bressler's Eric Church, because in 2 weeks later, we saw him at Northern Quest. He was opening up for Brantley Gilbert, but I think the funny part with that was his merch had just dropped, his first ever merch on Monday, and the show was on a Friday. And so we were able to get it through Amazon. We were up in the nosebleeds because we got some free tickets, and we just happened to walk through the casino to say hi to a couple of people, and Jessica knew someone that was there and was like, hey, the guy on your shirt's just over at the bar over there. And so, I rush over there and I'm like, Jessica, he's a cool dude. Let's get our quick pictures, but we're off to go see Cody Johnson in Billings the next day. So I was like, we're not spending hours looking for the guy. And so sure as hell, we found him in the bar. He sees sees his face on our shirts and just goes lights up, just the happiest dude you could see. And he's like, no way. And I mean, it was funny because everybody's trying to come talk to him and he's just sitting there BSing with us. And for probably 10, 15, 20 minutes, I kept being like, hey man, go meet your other fans. Like, no man, you guys are so cool. And it's one of those where Jessica's starry-eyed. I'm like, man, that was awesome. We'll hope to see him down the road, but this stuff doesn't happen very often. And so, fast forward about a year later, he came to the Lariat for a 93.7 The Mountain Night, and of course, we're front row, just super jacked to see him. And our late friend Sybil, rest in peace, was amazing and was able to get us backstage. And I think you helped us coordinate some of that, and Jamie Patrick, and it just kind of started this tradition where now every time we see him, he's signing a picture of a picture that he signed. And so we're backstage, he signs it, kind of remembered exactly who we were. He lit up, and I was kept telling her, this isn't something that happens. He's blowing up. His streams, you and I know that for how long, went from almost nothing to hundreds of thousands pretty quick overnight. And just remember, he's not going to remember who you are. It's okay. We can fan over him. And fast forward, about half a year later, he's at Nashville North, and you think we're at VIP with you, Kayla, and myself and her, and same thing. She's not going to remember you. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So we just happened to be standing after the show. You guys had to take off because it was right before Farmjam that year. Mm-hmm. And he looks over, sees both of us, and just all right, hold on, and then pulls us backstage. And so everything I keep telling her about how artists won't remember her is going out the window. And it's just cool because it's him and Brandon, his lead guitarist, and all of a sudden Jackson and Jessica are talking about teachers and special needs and how, all of that stuff. And Brandon and I are just sitting hey man, what do you do? I'm like, well, I run an ice rink, and how's traveling? And, and it's just one of those things where he didn't want to leave either. And bam, fast forward 2 years later, he's at Farmjam. So it's a kind of a long-winded way of why we're huge Jackson Dean super fans.
Well, and I think all of that kind of led to what happened at Farmjam. We were all super excited when we found out that Jackson Dean was even, possibly coming to Farmjam, and then, super hyped when Greg finally announced that was the Saturday headliner. And then it kind of came together to you as this perfect scenario. We have some extra access at Farmjam, just being, what we do there. So we were, able to talk to Jackson, and we knew that we'd be able to, but he was kind of crammed in between two different shows in California. He flew up for Farmjam and then immediately flew back down. So we had to talk to him that morning or that day to get his permission and to get his ideas on how to make this actually happen. But before we were even able to do that, you and Jessica somehow ended up back there. So you guys got to meet him before he had any idea what that day was going to entail. What was that first meeting like for you guys that morning?
Well, it was a little different, right? Because you and I and Kayla had kind of started to plot a little bit hey, we should ask Jackson. And if he's going to say yes, there's a little logistics we had to do. So she has no idea. And we hear sound check. And I know we'll talk about the front porch here in a minute, but you got Cam and Jamie who are nice enough to let us kind of go back there and hit sound check. And we're just sitting at the table, and she's super fangirling out, and I'm nervous as all heck because she has no idea what I'm about to ask her later that day, hopefully. And Jackson has no idea what I'm going to ask him. So one of my rarity moments where I was actually pretty quiet, and it was just kind of cool because he just remembered both of us right away and just got to BSing about the tour and being at Farmjam. But it was a nerve-wracking experience knowing that I had to get both of them to answer a question for me later that day.
Well, so then we got Jessica, took her back to the camp, and then you and I went back in, and you talk about the front porch. That's kind of this backstage area that's surrounded by some trailers that artists can kind of hang out at. And I swear it's manned by the nicest women in Colville, Cam and Jamie.
Absolutely.
But most headliners hide out in their bus or their trailer all day, and Jackson spent his time hanging out there right on the front porch. And we had to go over there, and you started, telling him, trying to explain to him what it was that we wanted, and you were beating around the bush a little bit. And finally I was like, Jackson, he wants you to help him propose tonight. And I've never seen anybody's demeanor change so quickly. He grabbed his chair, turned it towards you. He's like, okay, what's the plan? And at that point we didn't have a plan.
I was like, we don't know, man. We got to get one. Step one, you saying yes.
How much of a relief was it when he's like, yes, let's make this happen?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's one of those where, you and I have been around tons of artists, and you don't get starstruck that often, but, normally we don't ask them if, hey, can I be part of your show?
That's a big ask.
It is a huge ask, right? And luckily you saw that I was clamming up pretty good and just did the ask for me. And it was nice, but then all of a sudden it switched into gear of like, how do we make this happen? And I think that was one of those logistical things that I don't know how we would ever pull off again.
So when did the actual plan come together? Because at that point, nobody had a plan. He was like, come back, talk to me later. And then I was kind of out of the loop on that for the rest of the day.
Well, you had to go to work, and I'm trying to plan this proposal. And we got lucky. I talked, this. I've been talking about proposing to Jessica for some time now, but I didn't think it was actually going to happen there. I didn't plan that well ahead. So some really good friends, Jamie Gwinn, who's the voiceover of the Tea Party podcast, and Chanel Rogers actually did me a solid favor and drove the ring up from Spokane up to Colville. And it was just kind of that, hey, what song do you want to do it? What part of the set? And it's funny because some of her favorite songs of Jackson's are all like breakup songs or leaving songs. And he's like, we can't do that. I'm like, no, absolutely not. And then he's
not a good leg to start on.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one. And we finally kind of settled on Superstition because he knew him and the band could riff on that for a while. And then it was just them planning out the set list. And really, I didn't even know where Superstition was in the set list until, probably 45 minutes before the show. And the tour manager, I forget his name, he was awesome too to work with. And he's like, all right, here you go, text it to you. And of course it's later in the show, so now I know I got to sweat out for the entire show. But that was the pre-planning portion of that.
Well, so then, you guys are out in front because just like all the other shows, she wants to be front row watching Jackson from out front. How did you convince her to go from the front to the side stage?
It almost didn't happen. She was pretty adamant that she was not leaving the front. She had sat there and waited for Jackson and earned that spot. And so, Greg Knight was fantastic. And he was like, nope, you guys absolutely can do it. Battle, who's the stage manager, was like, nope, let's do it. And I'm like, hey, let's go side stage. Let's see him, see his perspective. We don't get to see for the show. She's like, no, I want to be right here. And I'm like,
absolutely not.
Yeah. Well, didn't think this was going to be an issue. So I was like, let's just go. We already got, our backstage pass for you. Let's go back there. And she was less than thrilled actually to have to go backside stage instead of being front row for that.
Well, and then there was several times that I almost screwed up the whole thing. I was the guy with the ring because obviously you couldn't have it in your pocket just wandering around. That's a very obvious, box to have in your pocket. And I knew that it was supposed to happen during Superstition, but that's all I knew. And I knew the set list. So I'm walking back there about 3 songs ahead. And as I'm walking to join you side stage, I got flagged down by somebody who needed help. So we've got 3 seconds left. I can see you guys, or 3 songs left. I see you guys standing side stage and I'm helping this person that needed help. And I finally get them passed off to security and come up there just as the song before Superstition starts. And as soon as I get up there, you hand me this cup of water and then you take off for the outhouse. And I'm thinking, he's not going to make it back here in 4 minutes. Did you realize where we were in the set list when you ran away? Was that on purpose?
This is a little probably TMI, but I'm a nervous peer. So when I knew it was coming up and it was that game time, I was like, okay, like, I got to go now because it's not going to look good with a big wet stain in front of your pants in front of all these fans. So it was, I was hoping you got there a little bit earlier, but you were doing some good work and saving some people. So we let that go. But yeah, no, I knew I had to make it quick on that one.
So then I have this cup of what I think is water, and I thought you were just handing it to me so that, you had free hands, and I needed both of my hands, one to give you the ring and then one to video from the side of the stage. And I set the cup down, and then you came back and you were a little bit panicked because I didn't have the cup. I didn't realize that the cup was such an integral part of what was going to happen. But walk us through what actually happened there for people that weren't there.
So when we were kind of figuring out how we were going to get me on stage before we were going to get her on stage, it was one of those where tour manager's like, hey, why don't you have Jackson ask for a drink, and then he can, you can walk him out this drink, and then, you'll sit there for a second, he'll talk about how awesome you and Jessica were, and then he can bring her on stage. But that drink was the integral part of why I was going to be on stage. And so, of course, I'm a little bit Joe Panic moment when I come out and the drink's nowhere to be found. And you're like, hey, trying to slide me the box. I'm like, no, not the ring. Where's the drink? Where's the drink? And that's what I was panicking for.
So you finally got out there, you go out there, and I turn and look at Jessica, and her jaw has just dropped. She's amazed that you're out there. And I talked to her after this. At this point, she still has no idea what's going on. She thought, it was just you and Jackson are buddies. And then she gets called out there. Even as she gets called out there, I think most of us are like, okay, this is the point that she's going to realize what's happening. But she was wearing that original shirt from that time that you guys met him at Northern Quest, and she thought he was calling her out there to just show people this shirt and maybe tell that story. So I think it was really cool because you really caught her off guard. I don't think she had any idea at all. Is that kind of the same thing that you guys have talked about since then?
Oh yeah, absolutely no idea. And you're trying not to be awkward about it or make it obvious, but I'm like, making sure that she tucks the backstage pass away because I know there'll be pictures, and trying to make sure her shirt's right. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, just checking you out backstage, just making sure you're good. And then, of course, I walk out with the drink for Jackson, and we both just miss the handoff, and he just spikes that thing on the ground. And we started laughing, and yeah, she has no idea she's getting called out. And I think one of my favorite videos is from Kayla, where you see this perspective of you see her backstage, has no idea, and then her face just lights up when he calls her out. Just as these are people I've met, they're so amazing. And she's not even looking at me when I got my back to her. And then obviously it's I think he's got a question. And I think the funniest part is I think Jackson's more excited than both of us. If you see
absolutely.
The video, Jackson just loses his mind, and I'm like, this is the guy, man.
Well, and he told us that he's never done anything like this before. So you guys were his first.
No, it was cool. And it was one of those where we always joked where before this, I was like, man, if I ever ask her to marry you, she's like, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. So I kind of had this fear of man, we got Jackson in on this. We've got thousands of people at Farmjam. She legit might just say no out of spite. And I think luckily all that kind of left her mind, and she said yes. And here we are now.
But I think the funny part about that night, at least for me, is that I introduce every single artist at Farmjam except for the Saturday night headliner when Jamie Patrick from 93.7 The Mountain comes up to do his thing, which I think was great because I was able to kind of be, more with you guys before that than trying to get stuff done. But Jamie was actually nice enough to sit down and talk to us about, how he became what he is on the mountain. So let's listen to what Jamie has to say. We're backstage at Farmjam now with Jamie frickin' Patrick from the 93.7 The Mountain morning show. Jamie, my friend, how the heck are you?
I'm doing great. It's really good to see you. You look well.
Thank
you.
The
success of the podcast is really fun to watch. It really is. You've done an awful lot since you unfortunately had to leave us a few years ago. I had plans for us, man. But anyway, congratulations on your success.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but that is where I got my start, was at the Mountain Morning Show, or with the Mountain, and then kind of in the Mountain Morning Show. And that's what kind of bred this podcast. It's that one part of the business that I didn't want to lose.
Right.
And it was watching you do all of that cool shit that I was like, I want to do that. How do I do that now that I'm not on radio?
Well, you've done great, but other than the business side of it and the broadcast side of it and the podcast side of it, congratulations on your family. I'm a fan of your son. I am watching. I'm not a fan of your son's hair, but as a goalkeeper, I'm excited. I love that he got all that new gear. got the goalie gloves, got it all going on. I grew up playing soccer. I was a striker. I was an outside midfielder in college, but I was a goalkeeper too during my teenage years. So it's actually kind of fun to watch you kind of rear your son up in that direction.
That's it. And I grew up playing goalkeeper too, and it's a complete trip watching him. Now I know how my parents felt every time I dove for a ball at somebody's feet.
Right.
I'm like, oh no, don't do that.
But see, you're lucky. Your kid's still playing soccer, man. My kids, they bailed on soccer years ago, and now we're a football family.
They look like they're crushing that, though.
They're doing well. Dalton's going to be a senior. He's playing running back, and then Donovan is the kicker for the Meat Panthers, and it's a lot of fun to watch them. We actually just went today and watched their blue gold game, and they both really, really excel, and it's going to be exciting times.
Oh, it's almost season time already. I mean,
That's
I guess
right.
That is right around the corner. August 31st today. About to get out here. Jackson Dean's going to hit the stage. War Hippies are just about to get on there. But before we get to what's happening here, I want to jump back with you. Sure. Because this is a story that I've never heard. How did you get into radio?
Oh, man. It's interesting. I was going through a phase in my early years at the community colleges. I'd finished my second year playing soccer. I didn't know if I was going to go on to a 4-year. I was really bored with the one job that I had. I was serving at Tony Roma's, which is now the old European breakfast house on Division next to the Onion. And I decided to take a second job. And I knew a lady who had dated my dad years and years before. And she was a grocery manager at Tidyman's at Lyons, which is now the Institute for the Blind. You ever notice that parking lot is always empty? Anyway, my wife just rolled her eyes. Anyway, so I asked her for a job. She said, yeah, we'll hire you for a few days a week or whatever. So I started as a bag boy. It took 3 days before they made me a cashier. Just something about my personality or whatever. And for a few months I was working there, and this guy used to bring his mother through on Sundays to do her grocery shopping. She was on a walker, she had oxygen, but they always came through my check stand, and she really, really liked me. He apparently liked my personality, and he worked at the KXLY broadcast group. Now, I grew up my entire life watching KXLY at my grandparents because it's the only damn channel they had. So I was, when he told me he was the head of research, I thought to myself, oh, researching news stories, that's cool. And he said, come work for me. So I waited about a week, almost to the deadline when he said to be there. And I got there, he gave me the job. Yeah, research was calling people on the phone saying, hey, do you have aluminum siding on your house? Do you mind if I ask you some questions? I was the guy you hang up on before you could hang up on them, with or just screen them.
Yeah.
So anyway,
no caller ID back then.
I did that for a couple months. I was going to quit. Sharon Keeling was a lady who did music research for KZZU. And at the time, it was 93 Zoo FM, Zoo Crew, the Breakfast Boys in the morning. And I was really interested in that. And she said, you can't quit this job. I'm going to introduce you to people in radio. We've worked with a guy named Dave Spencer. I went over to meet with him and try to get an internship on his sports station. He told me, you're stupid. You already have a job here. Why would you get an internship? You're getting paid. Let me introduce you to our promotions director. So he introduced me to Mike Ellis, who is a big community guy right now. He's doing a lot of good things for communities and charities. And he gave me a tryout in 1997. It was April, right after spring break or during spring break. And it was to babysit Bo Brady from Days of Our Lives. His name was Peter Reckel, and I had to babysit him for an entire weekend at the Autoboat Speed Show. In the meantime, I had to play the free money bunny. I had to teach people how to do the Macarena, all of these things over the weekend. And a guy named Paul Gray told somebody else, that kid's going to be a star. Let's get him in promotions, at least get him started. I started in promotions. I started becoming the bar guy that everybody wanted to be their tech. And we did things like Thud Puckers, Blue Dolphin, Good Times Pub, all of these things
all
for the
places
past.
that are gone now.
Yeah, I mean, that's how damn old I am. And anyway, it took about from the time that I started in research, or excuse me, in promotions in April, because I started research in December. When I started promotions in April to Christmas morning, 1997, midnight to 6 was my first air shift. February comes around. We needed a night guy. They bumped me up to nights for a little while until the guy they wanted came back from college. Then I went back to doing part-time and weekends, still doing promotions. And then somebody screwed up, and I ended up in middays for 5 years. After that, got let go for budgetary reasons, went straight up to the building that I work in now and joined the first and really only real hip-hop station that Spokane ever had, Wild 103.9. I worked for them for a while. I shifted into news talk at 1510 KGA. I did sports on 790 The Fan. I mean, I did just about everything. Until 2005, I got a phone call from a buddy of ours, Bob Castle. He was the assistant program director at KDRK 93.7 The Cat, or Cat Country 94. And said, we've got a budget that we have to use, and it's for our night show, and if we don't use it, we lose it. So I came on as the night guy, and I've been at KDRK ever since. I've done middays, I've done afternoons. Those open doors for me to do things like work for the Spokane Indians for 10 years as a stadium host. I worked for Washington State University for basketball and football for 7 years. Started doing mornings in 2011 with Sharon Bonds. Later that transitioned into Tanya Tyler, who you then started working with us for a little bit, at that point. And now I've been doing mornings I think I started my 7th year doing solo mornings on 93.7 The Mountain.
And now, here we are, backstage at Farmjam.
Yep.
You're about to get up on stage, introduce Jackson Dean to the crowd. You come out here every Saturday night and get this crowd pumped up every single year for Farmjam. This year, it's Jackson Dean. He's an up-and-comer. He's somebody that you guys kind of jumped on pretty early at the Mountain and really pushed hard. You had him out there at the Lariat, really small. Why is that so important for you to take these artists that you see potential in and help them grow from the Lariat into the stage here at Farmjam?
Because who am I not to give somebody my attention to chase their dream? That's the way I look at it. It used to just be where, as a music director or program director, you get a call from a record label to say, hey, I'm going to bring this guy by your conference room, and you get him to play. And there's a lot of programmers who don't want to see him. And I'm just wild. I just got to think of one day, I said, who the hell am I? I'm a DJ and a music director in Spokane, Washington. Who the hell am I not to have 30 minutes for somebody's dream? And then eventually we got to talking with one of our colleagues about, well, why have them play in your conference room? Why not have them play like at a little bar or something? Let's put them on stage in front of some of your listeners. And I think it started at a place called the Roadhouse in the Valley with Ashley McBride. It was one of our very first ones. We had Dylan Scott. We had Frankie Ballard. We had a lot of up-and-coming stars who are names that you know now.
Lauren Elena
play
was
little
one.
places. Lauren Elena was one, absolutely. And then we started doing the Lariat shows, Travis Denning, Priscilla Block. We jumped on Priscilla Block. I requested her right after the pandemic got over. Said, I want her for a show at a place called the Lariat, and they gave her to us, and it was amazing. It kicked off some of these shows. It's just proof that radio can bring new artists, and it's important to do so because you get to make friends with them. Okay, you get to decide if you're going to root for them and their success. And somebody like Jackson, he came and he played the Lariat. He was so gracious and so cool to all the listeners, put on a hell of a show. The place was rocking, and we became fast friends at that point. So anytime he comes along, I'm always going to root for Jackson. We just saw him in Nashville back in March. We were at the president of his label, Scott Borchetta's place. Ooh. And we were in his garage with like all these awesome freaking cars, a whole row of Ferraris. And there's Jackson along with many others like Tim McGraw and a couple other people, Chris Jansen, just playing his music. And his voice was so powerful just in an acoustic setting. I've never seen him perform with a full band. And here we are tonight at Farmjam. And it's such a great opportunity. And so cool that he would even consider coming back up here an hour north of Spokane where the airport's at. And he was willing to come do this. And I think it's awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and you mentioned that not only did he decide to come up here, we're an hour away from the airport, but he had to fly in this morning. He's going to fly out tomorrow morning, go play the Greek in LA. I mean, it takes some dedication to come up here to Farmjam. And
think of what you just said. He's playing Farmjam in Colville, Washington. He's playing the Greek Theater in LA tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just amazing. Those are the place like the Greek Theater, Hollywood Bowl, Red Rocks in Colorado. Those are bucket list places that artists either want to play or people like you and I want to see in our lifetime. And he's going from a beautiful location like what we're looking at now with the mountains and the sun going down here in Colville, and he's going to be in LA tomorrow, in front of a huge crowd, with the glam. Maybe no glam here, but a lot of country fans.
Lots of country fans. Well, I'm excited to hear you introduce him, have him get up on stage. Jamie, thank you so much for coming out here.
Thanks, Tippy. That's right, we used to call him Tippy.
Definitely leaving that in there. And thanks again to Jamie Patrick for jumping on the show. He was also nominated for Best Broadcast Personality at the Northwest Country Music Awards. So be sure to check that out as well at northwestcma.com. And it's never too early to start thinking about next year's Farmjam. In fact, tickets are on sale right now. Early bird tickets at farmjamfestival.com. It's the cheapest. You're going to get tickets all year. And for us, it's always fun to fantasize about what our dream headliners would be for Farmjam. I know for me, it's Friday night Zach Top, Saturday John Party, Sunday Kip Moore. That just feels like a good party on the farm kind of a vibe. If you had to pick 3 headliners for Farmjam, who would it be, Travis?
Oh, man. Really putting me on the spot here.
Really on the spot.
Oh, wow. Okay. Right now I'm on a big Graham Barham kick, and I know it's not how you say it. I think it's Graham Barham, but I think it's more fun to say Graham
Barham all day long.
He crushed it. Austin Williams brings so much energy, and I think he'd be fantastic. I got to get Alexander Kay back or there. I mean, I think she'd be
for sure
absolutely amazing. And kind of a wild card here, but I think we know an old friend. I think a Bree Morgan out of Wisconsin would be not very well known, maybe not a headliner, but definitely a Farm Jam must have.
And I'd go to that show. Let's just combine these lists. We'll send them to Greg. Greg, we've booked your Farm Jam for next year. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. Here you go.
Well, and we always talk about how it's like a real working farm. And for October, you can actually go up to that same farm. They've got a corn maze. You can pick out some of the biggest pumpkins. I think I sent you a picture of this. And for everybody else, you can see it on my Instagram at Radio Guy Ty. But we picked out a pumpkin on the way back from Canada last weekend. It's got to be 2 feet tall and 50 pounds. And if you're out there, you can get more information by searching for Colville Corn Maze on Facebook. But Travis, looking back at all of our farm jams, lots of different memories. I think this one's going to be the tops memory, not just, for what you guys did, but this year in general. And I'm excited for next year. But I appreciate you jumping on here with me and talking through it and saving my ass after technology screwed me.
No worries, man. Thanks for letting me tell the full story. And again, it was one of those things where you never know what life takes at you. And when Jackson agreed to, we pulled off a logistical miracle, and it was great that everybody kind of joined in and helped us make it happen. But an amazing farm jam, amazing people. And you can't say enough about the Knights and Greg and everybody else.
Friends, I just want to say a big thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Tea Party Country Music Podcast. I know this isn't what you're typically used to, but thank you for joining us for this one. Thank you, producer Travis, for stopping by to help us put together this episode, even though technology didn't agree with us. Thank you to everybody that stopped by our tent at Farm Jam and grabbed a wristband or a koozie or followed us on social media or tagged us. And one more time, thank you to everybody that has listened to the show over the last 5 years that's provided an opportunity and a reason for us to do this. Thank you to all of the artists that have jumped on here and continue to support this platform. I mean, our goal was to provide a platform for artists to connect with you fans in a way that's a little bit different than what you see on the radio or on TV. And I can't wait to see what 2025 brings to our little show. And I am so humbled, as I said at the beginning of the show, to be nominated for a Northwest Country Music Award at their show. Please be sure to head online and vote at northwestcma.com. You don't have to be a member even. Thank you so much for joining us on the Tea Party Podcast. It's a podcast where you find new friends and new music.
Go tee off on the like button at facebook.com/Tea Party Podcast.
This has been a Tea Party Communications production. Theme music created by Jesse Quandt. Announcer voiceovers by Jay Gwinn. And as always, hosted by Ty Pisani.